Now, is it a good idea to actually, as soon as you get an idea for a product or a service or something innovative, is it a good idea to start thinking about grants as the first step? You start planning for a grant. Would you do that? Or would you recommend that? Philip?
Well, yes, I think you need some preliminary data of some kind, because if you go with just ideas, it's not going to have any traction.
So have some data when you go to apply.
Yeah, try and get some, whatever data you can acquire really facilitates the whole process. But thinking about it or having it on your plan, like you can say, this year we're going to collect this data and then we're going to use it to leverage an application for a phase 1 grant. I think that's the way I would go.
Okay. Prathamesh, what's your take on that?
Yeah, again, so when I look at grants, I consider them as non-dilutive funding, which means you don't have to like pay anything in equity. So I consider like startup competitions or pitch competitions also as grants. So it depends on what exactly you envision. There is a possibility that again always take a portfolio approach. Let's say you have a side job, like a real job, and you get an idea. You can attend pitch competitions and win some 20, 30, 40K, and then once you have that, you can start building, like Dr. Philip mentioned. You can start working on some proof of concept. Like, so most panels, they say they look for high risk projects, but they are very conservative in general. Like they tend to like come towards, like, because it's an average and of the panel, and they tend to be conservative. So if you have data, and so let's say if you have one cadaver study, you apply for a 5 cadaver study. Oh, very likely it'll get funded, but the first cadaver study very likely not going to get funded if you don't have simulator study.
Oh, good. That's a good point. So the other piece is that you using your own efforts to learn the system versus hiring a consultant. Would you say 90% of the time you should hire a consultant, or 50% of the time, or what is your recommendation? Prathamesh, you go first.
Yeah, sure. So I would say what I did. So again, like, so I attended these conferences during JPM, and there was this group called Free Mind. They organize some non-dilutive funding conferences. So as someone who is not in the industry, I think your goal is to, in the shortest time, expedite that learning process to come to a level where you at least understand what is, like, a score, like which is what so like, what is like a DUNS number. So before even you apply for a grant, like, there's all this administrative work, like SAM's number, cage code, like, which needs to be done, and most of you would be at that stage. So like some of that process takes at least 4 to 5 months. So if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to apply for a grant, you very likely won't be able to apply in this cycle if you haven't done that.
You have to do the preparation work.
So first thing is, like, attend, like, again, like, it depends on what stage you are at. So if you have a lot of cash lying around, then you can use cash to expedite learning, and hire a consultant, and your return on investment is not just a reward, it's also like learning. Like this would be a good situation if you're a practicing physician, who's going through a grant process. But let's say you're graduating from a master's and you're lean on cash, then attend these events and like try to optimize the dollar. So what I did is I attended some of the free events, and then like I made like this $450 investment, in which was a pretty decent amount for someone who's like graduated and then immediately starting a company without much savings. So it was a pretty decent amount, and I was like first thinking whether I should go down that road or no. But then a friend of mine who eventually won like $6 to $8 million in federal grants recommended just attend that class. So speak to other people who've been successful through a similar journey, and attended that class. It's hosted by QB3 UCSF, and very good overview you get of the entire process. And like for some people, the win for them is they get their cage done, SAMs and cage done through the program, and they also attend learn, just like Dr. Philip mentioned, like they learn some of the administrative process about ERA commons, because again, if you're starting off, like the commercialization person, the technical person, the administrative person, it's all you. So I did all of that myself, so I had to learn everything. So and then so once we applied, we got phase one, we got accepted both by NSF and IH. Then I was like, I don't have time, and now I need to like raise some dollars and do all these operations related medical device work. That's when I just outsourced. I took like a risk sharing model, and I found someone because I knew the process, I knew how to delegate. Outsourced with a risk sharing model, $3,000 upfront fee, remaining contingent on award, and then we've done pretty well post that. So to answer your question, it depends on what situation you are in.
Great, great. Philip, do you want to add anything to that?
So if I understand the question, you mean should you, take on one of these agencies or people? Yeah. I mean, it's the cost really. Yeah. And the whole thing is what I call the opportunity cost. Yeah, so when you get the grant, you look back and you say, well, that's great, but it's a lot of time. I mean, you have to decide if you have the bandwidth to spend on a good application. If you're going to do it, you need to do it well, and it takes a lot of time. But if you have the opportunity, the time to do it, and you have the money, look, it cost for each of our grants that we put in, it must have cost, I'm thinking $8,000 to $10,000 to an agency. However, I think it was worthwhile. Looking back, it was worthwhile. But I know that money is not available for everybody. You can learn it, as you say. You can go to seminars. The NIH puts on seminars. You can use the help desk a lot. You can call them 10 times a day, and they'll always answer you very polite, and they pick up quickly as well. So you can, if you're good, you can do a lot of the work yourself. Okay. I think where the agency came in most useful for me was looking at what I wrote and saying, I don't understand that. Why don't you say it this way, or put a diagram in here? The reviewers are not going to understand what you said here. So that puts it in more perspective.
Yeah, great. All right, I'll take a question. Let's take a question from Raghav Tripathi. Go ahead, ask.
Yeah, thanks so much for the presentation. I had two quick questions. One is that if you're looking for the funding, I noticed that some of the funding you got, Prathamesh, was not from the federal agencies. It was from random, pitch competitions here and there, sometimes institutions. I was wondering how did you even find out about those opportunities? And then the second question I had is, do you need to be affiliated with a university? And if you don't need to, is there any benefit or downside of being affiliated with the university when applying for these federal level grants?
So generally, first question is just network. You're gonna need that skill set anyways for a lot of other things, because if whatever sector you're in, you generally do not have that experience. And there are all these functions which people have been doing for 20, 25 years, and you need to be able to recruit good talent who's done this for a long time. So networking is anyways essential if you want to build a good business. So that's number one. While you network, you there are these just like InnovatorMD, right? It's a platform. They don't have a pitch competition, but they can in future. But there are other platforms.
It's coming.
Yeah. QB3 is an ecosystem you can enter. Stanford has an ecosystem, and now because of COVID, everything is remote. It's just sign up to those newsletters which feel like spam, and some of my grants, like the NIH $100,000 grant through University of Massachusetts, that I learned about that through a newsletter. And I just applied, and I was like, oh, I have free time instead of, doing something else. There's this hit and miss. Yeah, again, it's a portfolio approach. If you have free time, you can utilize that, but again, you have to be very careful. You can't like spread your resources too thin. NIH is a good agency, and UMass again, like they have other resources, so you'll be able to double down again on those. So that's your first question. Like you just have the network. If you don't have a network, you have to build it before you need it. So just go and network. Anyways, it's going to help you. Second thing is regarding affiliation to universities. So it depends. So like NSF has this thing called ICOR program, and for the ICOR program, like they define affiliation in a different way. So if the IP came out of the university, then that is considered like an affiliation, and then you're eligible for ICOR program. But like if you graduated and then like after graduation you came up with something, then you are technically not university affiliated, but you can still learn the skill sets. So does that answer your question?
Well, I think the question is whether there is a disadvantage to not being in a university. Philip, what do you think?
Not really. Like in what way? Like what exactly are you looking to gain?
Success of getting a grant.
I don't have any data around that, but I think what's more important is the quality of what you're doing and how you express it and how you write it. And surround yourself with people who have great backgrounds. They have lots of publications. They have academic careers in the past. I mean, this is but in the end, it's what you're writing attractive to the NIH or whatever other agency? Is it innovative? Because often I got a comment, this is not innovative, so you get feedback. So you need to think, well, what is innovative about what I'm proposing, and bring that out. Otherwise, if you're not enthusiastic or you don't sell it, the same information can be put over in a bad way and a good way. So make sure that you sell yourself. It is a pitch. It is a pitch, but you have to be honest as well. But it is a pitch.
Yeah. Now, when you're actually doing a study or a pilot or a clinical trial, do you need to involve a university?
No,
not necessarily.
They do have requirements. You have to use what's called a central IRB for the NIH, which is no, you don't have to. But
you don't have to involve.
You should go to clinical sites that will give you good quality data. It doesn't matter where they are.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you just take the money and you shop around for somebody who will do it. Is that what it is?
Yes. Well, you may have, if you're a very narrow field, who the people are who have the patients and have the interest in your study. I mean,
that area.
Enrollment is the Achilles heel of clinical development. So you have to make sure whoever you go to is not only honest and good quality people, but also have the patients to enroll.
Yeah. Okay, let's take another question from Vipula. Vipula, go ahead.
Hi. This is for both Prathamesh and Philip. And Prathamesh, I think you and I were on the same cohort when we got the NSF grant. So we just completed our phase 1 of the NSF grant, and we are moving into the phase 2. And I look at it, and I heard both of you say that it's best to outsource that process of grant writing. Am I hearing that right? If I'm wrong, correct me, please. And if so, see, the technical stuff we know because we are the inventors is a commercialization piece that needs a lot of external data inputs to make it a robust plan. So what is your advice on those?
Sorry, I mean, could you rephrase it? I mean, are you asking me, whether
Please rephrase the question.
Whether you need a consultant to do this? Is that the question?
Correct. Yes. Because of the commercialization is so heavy for the phase 2 grant, and getting those data points, market data points, is pretty expensive and challenging. So would you advise outsourcing that for that part of the grant writing? Because technical, we are very good and we can get that through, but it's a concern with the commercial.
Well, if you don't have an internal person who can do the, look for the data and summarize it well for you, then you have to go outside for that. I mean, some of these reports are really expensive, market assessments and things. I never want to pay the money that they ask for those kind of reports. But if you have an epidemiologist, for instance, who can use their own, 2 legs and go and get papers and summarize them in some way, that would be good.
Okay.
Like you want to know what the market size of your patient population is. You want to know what the revenue that you might expect from marketing your product. What does the competition get, for each treatment? Those kind of data, if they're not publicly available, but I'm sure a lot of it is. So if you have someone who can go and search for that stuff, and they're not too expensive, I would certainly do that.
Maybe hire a grad student intern or something.
That's a good idea.
You have to know, yes. You have to know how to search as well and where to search. But yes, it can be difficult to get accurate data, and you can read 100 papers and they all say something different.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the most challenge has been around the reimbursement and access part of that commercialization piece, because ours is going to be the bedside for patients as well as for the surgical operating rooms. And that data to get that into that granularity is pretty tough.
Yes. Well, sometimes you can suggest what you think it will be and try and justify what you're saying if there's no data, but it's better to try and find some data sometimes.
Yeah, Vipula, you can use Dawnbreaker. So they would have reached out to you through NSF. So it's an agency that it's weirdly affiliated with NSF, but it helps NSF companies, like phase 1 companies, go through phase 2 grants. So we initially worked with Dawnbreaker, and like through them, they have some affiliation with Market and Markets and another, I think, Frost and Sullivan, and and there are 2 or 3 more market research companies. So you get all that data for free. So we asked them to generate a custom report for us, and we got a lot of data. I would say around 140 pages from different reports combined, because NSF has purchased that resource. So yeah, reach out to Dawnbreaker. That is one. And since you're applying for phase 2, I would say if you don't have a CPA, you should get one, because the CAP and CAR review, which is AICPA financial review, it's a legit financial review, so it's a headache. But they'll ask for all the documentation that is required. And I'm not sure how you're doing your accounting process, but they require GAAP accounting. And if you don't have an accountant, I would recommend get an accountant, anyone who can assess you through that process. Because what will happen is, let's say you have a phase 2 grant approved, recommended by NSF, and then you initiate the CPA review process. Then it would be very last moment, and you'll be in a very stressful, panicky mode. So get one, I would say at least a month post phase 2 application.
Okay, thank you for that advice, Prathamesh. That's very helpful. Yeah, I don't have a CPA.
No, get one, because our CPA was not familiar with grant accounting, and there's a FAR Part 31 guidelines. I had to sit and read, but now I have someone who can do it for us. But I would say outsource some of these aspects.
Prathamesh, can you put those resources in the chat box so that others can see that?
Yeah, I'll just paste a few links.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Xiao Han, what's your question? Unmute and ask. I saw that you have a few questions in the chat box, but go ahead. You're still muted. We can't hear you.
So I'll start with a few questions, but they're probably all short. One of them is that, you mentioned that the letter of recommendation is very important. And when it comes to a letter of recommendation for the phase 1 stage, who are that typical, who would, increase your chance of success of getting the grant? What type of people?
Yeah, it would be someone that would, as in it's a very logical thing, right? Whatever your business is, like it would be one is like a customer, for us. So it's public, because I have his permission. But like for us, GMR is the largest EMS transport company in the world, and Ed is their chief medical officer. So EMS transport uses a lot of bags, and their chief medical officer evaluating our product and writing a letter of recommendation adds a lot of value. So similarly, whatever is your space, like whoever is like a large customer, a letter of recommendation from a customer.
Does it have to be a customer or a potential customer?
Oh, potential customer. We are not FDA cleared, so
Exactly.
it's potential customer. Yes, thank you, Yuli.
And this is not in any way of a letter of intent. So basically you go to this customer and say, hey, is this something that, this is interesting? And then if they say yes, that will be a letter of recommendation. Is that what you're saying?
So it has to be like, so look at this from NSF standpoint, right? Like a customer writing a letter validates the problem. So the letter has to say, this is a large problem that needs to be solved, and we are trying to solve this, and this is of interest to us. Next step could be, for a clinical product like ours, is clinical evaluation. So each customer generally does some clinical evaluation. So our letter says something in the direction that it goes over the credibility of the person who's writing the letter. It goes over the organization. These are things you'll find on Wikipedia. So let's say, if Kaiser Permanente is, or let's say that, an ER physician from Kaiser is going to be the one using your product, then, you can write like, first, this ER physician has been working for 25, 30 years. He's a chair. Kaiser is this organization. The ER physician says that, oh, the problem you're solving is a problem which, we've been trying to solve. This is how common the problem is, and this is why it needs to be solved. And post clearance or post grant approval, I would love to evaluate the technology or conduct a study. That's it. So yeah.
And in general, do you want 3 of the same kind of people for the letter of recommendation? Because they're asking for 3 letters.
No, it has to be different. So one is like a customer persona. Second could be an investor persona. Third could be like a strategic. So let's say you have, I don't know what your product is, but let's say if it requires distribution or channel partners, then a letter from a large distributor or a channel partner is really valuable. So if each business has some key things that you need to accomplish. For example, like if your business has a very high technical risk, then like someone who is an expert in that technology writing a letter that this new concept of sterilization is something I've been trying to work on, and this person like did a good job. So does that make sense?
Yes.
Like,
okay.
You need to identify what are the risk factors that would come out
Okay.
in your proposal, and the thing needs to address those risk factors.
So let me kind of rephrase it by applying what we're trying to do, since we're doing optimization, the scheduling optimization model, which includes forecasting like an optimization model for emergency physicians who to better staff to demand. So in that case, what you're trying to say is we should find someone maybe like a university professor who kind of does optimization forecasts. That's as one. Another one as maybe a investor or someone who might see a market potential. Or the third one will be like a medical director or a physician who will be affected by the scheduling itself.
Like a
that could be one.
medical group director.
Yeah. as in, I don't know how you're going to deploy it, if it's going to be through Epic, and if Epic is like, oh, like, I don't know how that aspect works, but if someone from their team is going to be like, oh, we really love this and we can't do this in-house, and that's why, like, this person is awesome and their company is awesome, and something of that sort.
Perfect. Okay, makes sense.
Philip, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, letters of recommendation with the NIH grants are more letters of support, which you get from your external vendors, your consultants. So we don't have to have a letter of recommendation for the grants that I applied for. But I agree with what was said before. People who, have a reputation in the field, it could be someone who can describe the unmet need and support what you're doing, or say, that they know you and they think your plans are very solid, anything that can increase your reputation in the eyes of the granting agency.
Okay,
Right.
makes sense.
Right.
Perfect.
Thank you. Let's see. Let's go to Sinju. Sinju Thomas, your question.
Thank you, Dr. Yule. First of all, congratulations and thank you so much for bringing two very resourceful personalities, Dr. Yule. Actually, it is very encouraging and motivating because you are seeing two generations of innovators. So it's for the budding innovators, it's very encouraging to see, and hats off to you, both of you, into securing that many grants. It's not easy at all. My personal experience, 2019, I applied for a NIH grant. I don't know whether I should call myself as naive or being stupid. There was nobody, it's just me. I just applied. I go through the first phase. So the good thing happened with the first phase is you get a critical review. And I just want to add to the point that there was question came up with the role of academia in the grant processing. So the main critic was, I don't have any prior research experience. So they told me the project is awesome, but I need to collaborate with a researcher. So having a research collaborator who is having, as Dr. Philip has mentioned, with numerous papers, it would be an additional plus point. So thank you. I just want to add that one. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Yes, exactly.
Good point. Good point. All right. Let's go to Syed Muhammad.
Yeah, so it was a nice discussion, and so my question is that, like, I'm also affiliated with a university as a research faculty. So if in case of applying for small business grant, so this company needs to be registered before we apply for phase 1. So if a university have a conflict of interest, clause in that, how do we navigate around that?
When you say conflict of interest?
Conflict of interest in the sense, like, when you are a full-time employee, so you need to be like working with that conflict of interest. I think there is a act called BEIDO Act. So
you have to become a contractor or something, or quit the job. Is that right, Philip?
Well, if I'm understanding you, you mean that the university doesn't want you to be part of the company, right?
Yeah, so in that situation.
Well, you can't break the university rules without jeopardizing your position there. So it's a tough situation. Maybe you need to take the plunge and just go rogue, if you know what I mean. I don't know what the legal aspects of that are, but I mean, most universities that I've been in touch with encourage the nesting of small companies within their institutions so that they can benefit from their IP rights that they have when you invent something in their facilities. So I think it's a matter of negotiation, saying, listen, guys, if you let me work on this, you're going to get royalties down the road from anything that comes out of this. And so but each university is going to be different, and some are more innovative than others. But you shouldn't break any rules.
Yeah,
and there are departments, right? There are departments that deal with the IP issue and how to license it from the university, and then you become, part of that company.
Yeah,
exactly.
Let's see, Sinju, you have your hand up.
Yes, just want to, from attending to these kind of conferences and discussions, one thing I understood is if you don't have the IP already before the study, then university may, take a portion of the IP, or you may have the university may license it or something like that.
Yeah.
So they have to be, so the university is going to license the IP for other companies or something like that. Thank you.
Great. Okay, looks like there are no hands up. So I'll ask the question. At what time during this part you actually go to the investors? Do you want to, go through the money that you already received, or do you start that process even before actually receiving the grant money? Once you know you have received the grant money, what is a good timing to go to the regular investors?
I see them as two separate processes. They're both streams of money that you need for your company. One is often dilutive, the other one isn't, as you said. But I don't think there's a sequence. I think you should pursue both strategies in parallel. You're always going to need money. That's never going to be easy. So, and people will invest more in your company if you have grant money, because they like that aspect of it. So I think you do it as a parallel path.
Prathamesh?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So again, like Dr. Philip mentioned, it's dilutive versus non-dilutive. As a founder, you want to retain as much ownership as possible while not jeopardizing the growth. But it's good to remember that, again, those FAR Part 31 guidelines, I sent a link of a CPA firm which is, given good documentation on just some of the federal expenses, and many expenses are not actually allowed, like patents, sales and marketing, manufacturing, expenses outside the US, those are expenses that are not permitted by the grant. Like generally SBIR grants, which are the larger chunk of grants. Yeah. So you would want to fund those expenses with dilutive capital, because it's generally the fastest and easier to get, because you're selling your equity. So it has to be in parallel. Let's say if you are a very experienced entrepreneur, 2 past exits, then dilutive capital is much easier for you than non-dilutive capital.
Then okay.
And so yeah, it's again, it depends on each company, each founder, and what is good for you. Like if your strategy is to file a lot of patents, and if you are in that space where patent protection is ultra critical, you won't be able to fund that through grants. Patents are very expensive.
Yeah, great. Let's see, let's take a question from Xiao Han.
So earlier you mentioned that a lot of these there's 4 or 5 months of preparation work that goes into the grant. What are we talking about in terms of preparation work that actually takes 4 to 5 months without outsourcing to others?
You mean how many hours?
Well, I think it's more of a what is the process or parts that actually take a really long time, because I was looking at what is the part that takes a really long time, out of the 4 to 5 months? Because earlier you mentioned that.
Well, putting together for an NIH grant, the research strategy and the commercialization plan, the budget and the budget justification are the core documents that take a lot of time, because you rewrite them and you get feedback and you revise them and things like that. Plus assembling all the documents you need for the application, like the bio sketches from people, the the letters of support. Vendors have to provide a description of their facilities. Someone has to go chase all those documents, and that takes time too.
Got it.
But I think the actual writing of those 4 documents, the budget justification, research strategy, and commercialization plan, take a long time, at least if you want to do them well.
Does that apply to the NSF grant as well, or is it this kind of the same thing?
Yeah, generally many people underestimate like how much time they want to commit to the grant. You can submit a grant application within 3 days, but you won't get the grant.
Really?
So
Yeah. And just another question, I was looking at one of the links that you had, the bayicorps.com. Is it only restricted to the Berkeley, Stanford people, or is it like, could non-university affiliated people go attend that?
We didn't have any Stanford or UCSF affiliation. Generally, these programs are very inclusive. So, so generally they all want you, and they're there to support you. So they will find a way to make it work. Like, for example, like with the Bay Area I-Corp, they'll give you the education. Let's say you're not university affiliated, which is one of the requirements. When I say university affiliated, it means like your technology came out through the university. They will still, give you the education, but you may not be eligible for the $50,000, which comes through NSF, because it's only for universities. But like some of the skills are very, very, very essential, I would say.
Perfect. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Good. The next question is from Prafula.
Sorry, I have too many questions. Thanks for accommodating me. So my question is, so we did the NSF phase 1, and as we were doing—
By the way, Kim, you're next.
We got approached to work with DoD and BARDA, and using the same technology platform, but for totally different application, like in the war zone. My question is that a conflict? Because these are all kind of like, when you fill out the forms, Prathamesh, as you probably know, is, and Philip, to you too, they ask you, is your, project being funded by previous federal or any other, grants? And you obviously I have NSF, so I said yes. Does that interfere with getting the future grants from the other agencies like STTR, Army STTR, or anything like that? Because we haven't heard anything yet, but they had solicited that information for us to apply.
Well, I mean, just off the cuff, I would say that if you justify why for this grant it was certain activities that don't overlap with the activities you applied for the other grant, you have to make that clear. And there was always a section where they ask you for this, what's your source of funding, and on an individual basis, what's your effort? I mean, do you have the time to do this grant? They're always interested in what's your effort on different grants, for instance.
We have 2 different PIs from the team. Yeah.
Okay, but if you were one person and your effort added up to more than 12 months a year, that wouldn't be good. So you have to just make it clear that yes, we applied for this grant, but there's no overlap, because we're doing this patient population, and for that grant we're doing that patient population, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kim, you're up next. What's your question?
Hi. So I saw that, you have to spend the money in the US, do all your development and hire all of your, whether you're hiring people or even if you're using independent contractors, have to be in the US. Does that apply to the monies you've already spent, or is that only the money that you receive from the grant? Or is there a way around that? Because I have actually started development, and I have developers. Obviously, I'm here in the UAE. My company is a US registered company, and I do plan to launch in the US. But so I'm just wondering the eligibility requirement there. Can I still meet it if I've begun development outside of the US?
I mean, I don't know the exact rule, but my gut feeling is that if you've done development outside the US, paid for it yourself from other sources, there's no problem with that. As long as the activities you're applying for will be done within the US. And you have a US-based, I think either a company or a subsidiary is US-based. I think that's okay. Each agency could differ in that regard. So I don't see a problem. Now, there are exceptions to this thing about not being able to do it outside the US, and that is if there's a certain development process which is not available within the US, you can sometimes make the argument that that activity can, for instance, we have, we had a toxicology grant which we weren't awarded, but one of the things that we wanted to do was perform some of the toxicology in Canada, and we had to make arguments why it wasn't available. Actually, it was available in the US, but the cost was like 3 times. And so we could make a cost argument why it should be done outside, but it does create a more of an uphill process. It's better to try and focus down within the US.
Well, yeah, and so that has been the reason why I've been self-funded up till now, obviously, and development for virtual reality and software development is cheaper outside of the US. Now, that's not to say that I wouldn't take it inside the US if I had grant money to spend. But, that's not been my option till now. So I just wanted to know if that would, if that would make me ineligible just because of that's how the path has gone so far.
No.
But I mean, I could definitely, if I were to receive grant money, could agree to, use that money in the US, because I understand, it's US government money and should be spent in the US. So you don't think that would preclude me or make me ineligible?
No, you should use the data you've acquired outside the US to support the grant, within the US. I don't see a problem. In fact, when we were considering a larger clinical trial, some of which we needed to perform outside the US and some of it within the US, we could have asked for money just to support the patients within the US. So, it doesn't mean you can't do activities outside. Of course, that's the beauty of it, isn't it? That you leverage a global, expertise pool, and there's nothing against you doing that.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. I think we have passed our time, but people, please stick around, and I want to thank our speaker panel, Prathamesh and Philip. It's a pleasure. This is a great topic, I think, and very much needed.